Hi everyone, welcome back. If you're returning, welcome to my channel. It's Elizabeth and it is Sunday, May 23rd. I thought I would make a video for you. No cards today, just a chat. So if you were attracted to the title, I think that this will be an interesting talk. I wanted to look at some important things, one important placement in particular inside of Johnny Depp's natal chart that I think is really interesting. So I've had a lot of revelations and thoughts around this. In fact, I recorded a very lengthy video just a few nights ago, but I wasn't really satisfied with it. I feel like I missed some important points, so I wanted to come back and talk about it and share this amazing view with all of you, give you some Sedona vibes. It's a beautiful day here. So, all right, let's get started. So when Johnny Depp was born, he had his natal Chiron in the sign of Pisces in his 8th house. So just a brief overview of what Chiron is. Everybody has a Chiron. It's Chiron. And Chiron is an asteroid and it has a planetary influence. So, you know, there's been a lot of talk around what it should be classified as, and I feel like they landed on an asteroid, although it does have a planetary influence. It doesn't traverse around the sun in a regular orbit the way that the other planets do. It's more erratic and irregular. Anyway, Chiron is the Greek mythology of a centaur, half man, half horse with the arrow. And this centaur was unlike the other centaurs. So he was abandoned by his mother and his father, and he was taken in by one of the Greek gods, whether it was Zeus or Apollo. I'm not quite sure. You can look that up for yourself. I always confuse those two. So anyway, the other centaurs, they were known for being warlike. They're warriors, you know, fighters. And Chiron, he was actually a bit different. He was taken in by again, whether it was Apollo or Zeus, I think it was Apollo who took him in and showed him the world of healing and wisdom and knowledge. And so Chiron was really very different. And he became a healer, very, very wise. He was able to heal everybody. Anything he touched, he could heal. Except for himself, he was struck with a poison arrow, and because he was immortal, meaning he would live forever, he would have to live forever suffering from his own wound, while at the same time being able to heal everyone else. And the story goes on, and I won't go any further with that story of what happened to Chiron. You can look it up for yourself. Anyway, so where Chiron falls in each of our natal charts when we were born, what sign Chiron was in, it shows us throughout our lives what our deepest triggering is, where we are the most triggered throughout our life, and where our core wounding comes from. So it's the sign that it was in, and also in your own chart what house that fell in, because the houses have their own influences. So Johnny Depp was born in 1963, and Chiron was in Pisces, in the sign of Pisces. And so what's interesting, so I'm just going to kind of cut to the chase here, and then we'll go into it. So I had a feeling his Chiron was in Pisces, and when I looked further into it, what struck me was that I realized that when he met Amber Heard, excuse me, he went into his Chiron return. So meaning we all have a Saturn return. Most of you have heard of that. And it's like when Saturn return comes, like watch out, you know, some stuff's going to go down. Things are going to happen. With Chiron's return, it usually comes when you're around 40 years old. It's different for everybody, but it's around that age. So it sort of coincides with the quote unquote midlife crisis. Now, because Chiron is there to show us where our wounding is and the wounds that we'll have throughout our life, it's also where that wound, those triggers, that wounding actually can become your superpower. So it shows you, it's not just for the woe is me, this is my wound, you know, it's for it's for transformation. It's for being able to transmute it and turn it into your superpower. So it shows you where you have the capacity to heal others and also to heal yourself, even though in this sort of human form, in this human experience, maybe the wound will never be fully healed, but it'll be integrated and it'll be able to become your superpower. So that's why I feel that Chiron is so important. Ever since I found out about it, I wanted to know more about it, know how it affected me, and know what I can do with it personally. So when I was looking at Johnny Depp's and I said, oh my goodness, I can't believe it, but literally in 2010, he went into his Chiron return. And I'm sorry about the airplane noise if you can hear it. I've got my earbuds in, so I was trying to help out with the sound here. But so he meets Amber Heard, and that's when Chiron comes back into his chart shortly thereafter. He's in his first Chiron return. Because technically, if we live long enough, we could have two of them. Just like the same thing with Saturn. You could have two or maybe even three Saturn returns throughout your life. You get a Jupiter return a few times. So anyway, let's just talk about Chiron in Pisces, because that's where Johnny Depp's Chiron is. Now, for each of you and all of you, we're all unique. We all have a unique experience. We all have unique wounding. So those of you that have a Chiron in Pisces, what I'm about to describe, it may not fully resonate with you, but there'll be a theme. You know, there'll be a theme, and that's kind of how it goes for all of us. So it's not that each of us that has our Chiron in the same place will be identical, by no means, because we're all unique. So what I'm about to describe, if you have your Chiron in Pisces, you know, you can take what resonates and leave the rest. So here we go, Chiron in Pisces. So Pisces is the 12th sign of the zodiac, and I entitled this Chiron in Pisces, the wound of empathy. Some people call Chiron in Pisces the wound of faith. The 12th house is the culmination of all of the signs. Pisces is the sign that contains everything. It's all of the duality. It's all of the polarity. It's everything. And that's why you see the two fish swimming in opposite directions, because it's as if this type of energy, it can pull you in opposite directions. You're sort of experiencing everything through Pisces. So the 12th house is the house of undoing. It's the house of mystery. It's the house, and Pisces is the sign of, it's water. So it's where there's a deep empathy, compassion, like heavy feelings, extrasensory, in fact. So psychic, but very, very heightened senses. This is someone who, with the wound there, he is a highly sensitive soul, highly creative soul, a poetic, think of the Knight of Cups in the tarot, the dreamer, the poet, very romantic, very creative, arts and music and literature and poetry, all of those beautiful things. It's where the imagination is born, so it's imagination, it's related to Neptune, so it's very dreamy. And it's also where there can be great illusion, fantasy, delusion, and the darker side of things as well. So Pisces can rule over addictions, alcohol, drinking, substances, all of that. It's also where you sort of have the victim slash martyr. So you become both. You are a victim, and he was as a child. He experienced a lot of hurt, we'll call it hurt. And this goes back to his mother, obviously. His mother was very ill and was very abusive towards him. And we even saw him talk about how she was, you know, she could be very cruel to the other siblings as well as him. So he experienced victimhood at a very young age, and that's the wound of faith, because it's sort of where you really can't understand why the universe, why God, whatever has done this to you, why you've been put inside of this situation. So you lose faith. So there's the victimhood. And then on the flip side, this being a highly sensitive person, individual, very empathic, in fact, so empathic that a Chiron in Pisces can feel the suffering of others, feel the suffering of the world, and especially around someone in an, an intimate relationship, a family relationship, really feeling the suffering of that person. So it creates this push-pull between, I'm being hurt, but I feel your pain. And that's why the 12th house and Pisces is also sacrifice, because it's almost where you sacrifice your own right to be happy, your own right to be safe, your own right to be protected, to be healthy. You sacrifice that because of your compassion and your empathy and the way that you can feel someone else's pain, particularly your abuser. So you'll sacrifice yourself in order to save them, to want to save them. It's confusing, and a lot of us can relate to this on some level. So with Chiron and Pisces, there aren't a whole lot of boundaries, energetic boundaries, physical boundaries. This is someone who will really have a lot of challenges around establishing healthy boundaries, especially as a child. I mean, my goodness, so taking on someone else's suffering and making it okay for them to inflict pain upon you, and then a lot of that becomes very internalized. So the other side of Chiron and Pisces is where you will detach and become avoidant and sort of go into that fantasy. That's where a lot of poets are born and dreamers are born, and that's where a lot of incredible art comes from, is through pain and suffering that becomes internalized, and then it's expressed in that way. So it's also the polarity of the fish being pulled in two opposite directions, where then there's like a detachment, a total detachment. So that's the long and the short of how his Chiron and Pisces presented, I believe. I don't know everything. I wasn't there. So I'm sure that I'm missing a lot, and maybe there's a few things that aren't correct, but I believe that's how it presented for him, where he very quickly realized that if he took some of those pills, then it would calm him down. And so that's where you can numb out, because there's an overwhelm of senses. So the drugs, the alcohol at a young age helped him to numb out. And then his Saturn being in Aquarius, also, I believe, in the 8th house, so sitting closely to Chiron. Chiron representing the mother wound, let's say, for him. And then his Saturn, which represents the father, in Aquarius, retrograde, sitting close to Chiron, is going to represent when his father left. And how that abandonment happened. And I feel that he's a naturally, he wants to forgive quickly. I know with his father, it was very confusing, and I think that hit him really hard. And so then, he gets older and he decides to go pursue his arts and his music, and he does that, and then he is discovered, right, in Hollywood, and he rises to fame very quickly. So this is where he's in his early 20s, and he becomes a star very quickly, and he's very well known. And so inside of all of that, between the fame and the money, and he is very introverted in a sense. We'll talk about his Leo ascendant, but he is otherwise very introverted and shy in a sense. And so I believe that he really internalizes all of this. He doesn't actually have the ability, the tools, or the capability, or even the time to really work on himself at that point, with the money and partying and, everything that came along with his stardom and his rise to fame and just being this legend and being very epic and working on his craft. I also think the Chiron in Pisces as the superpower is where he is such an amazing actor, and he can play these different characters so well because of Chiron in Pisces as being part of the superpower. And the Leo ascendant helps him shine, really. I know he's a Gemini, but he's a minimal Gemini because he doesn't really have any other important placements in Gemini that I'm aware of. And so he's really not so much a Gemini. He's a minimal Gemini. His Leo ascendant is at 0 degrees, and that's the miracle number. It's where Leo is the most potent. So your ascendant is like the first breath that you ever took. It's your first breath of life. It's where you move towards embodying in your future. Your North Node is part of your destiny too, but the Leo ascendant at 0 degrees Leo, it's its most potent. So he's a very powerful Leo energy, and that in itself can indicate where a lot of the anger that he's not able to express because he sacrifices himself for other people's hurt, it gets repressed, and then the lion can roar, you know? So a lot of internalized anger. And fast forward. Okay, so let's just fast forward. Johnny Depp is Johnny Depp. He has his life, he has his relationships, he becomes a father, which seems very important to him. He has the relationship with Vanessa, and he still hasn't been able to fully go deep within to these wounds that he has. I'm sure he did some work. I really feel as though he has, at that point he did do some work, but clearly he didn't do enough. And also remembering that, you know, back in the 80s and the 90s, we didn't have the internet. You know, we didn't have a lot of the spiritual awareness that was so mainstream. I think it's important for people to remember that. It was still very up and coming, very new, wasn't as mainstream. A lot of these topics weren't as openly talked about because, again, we didn't have the internet. So I know he had therapy. I know he had times where he was very sober, and I know he had times where he wasn't. So in 2010, his Chiron returns, and this is where some stuff is going to come up. So Amber Heard comes into his life, you know, around that time for the Rum Diary, and then there's a couple of years, and then they get into a relationship. And this is where it's like his mother returned. We might as well call it the mother return. And he's going to experience all of that all over again, but this time as a fully grown man who has all of this notoriety and all of this money and fame and all of that. And she is who she is. So we're not really going to talk about her too much specifically, but just to say that she brought up all of the stuff that his mother did to him, and she reflected that back to him as something that was unhealed and as something that was unintegrated. So that happens, and the entire time that they were together, he was in his Chiron return. In fact, when he and her divorced, he was still in his Chiron return. It didn't leave and move into Aries until 2017. So his entire relationship with her was Chiron return. And this is where it's coming up as his second chance at this. Very painful though. And he had to relive a lot of that hurt, we'll say, the hurt all over again. And this is where you can see he sort of starts repeating again, where I feel like this is someone who, if you come to him with your story about your victimization, about your pain, about the things that you went through as a child, he will take that on. He will feel you. He will feel your suffering. He will feel your pain. He will have compassion for you. He will love you. And he did with her in a sort of, you know, maybe fatherly way. And it was fireworks for them maybe in the beginning. And she was playing a role, you know. I'll talk briefly about where her Chiron is and what that means to me. So, you know, they're in this relationship, and it's all coming up for him so that he can say no more. And part of the healing of the Chiron wound for him is that he gets to say, I'm no longer going to sacrifice myself. I know that you've had your problems. I know that you have pain too, and you've suffered too, but there's no excuse for this. I don't accept this. This isn't right. And that's really a big part of it, is saying no, overcoming his own substance abuse as well. And like, the opiate addiction, as far as the prescription medication, you know, we could talk about the doctors that prescribe these things, where it is just so dangerous, and I really wish that that would stop. I really do, because it's the hardest addiction to overcome, point blank, period. It's painful. And if you know anyone who's struggled with that, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I kind of want to like stay on track here, because I feel like I'm getting off track, but this is where, you know, this is the test, and this is before his Saturn goes return, because after the Chiron return, then his Saturn return comes, like one right after the other. So this is the opportunity for him to, it's a huge wake-up call. It's just the biggest wake-up call, and he's and part of it is understanding his own anger, understanding the reason why, you know, you feel this anger. It's righteous anger, and it's about channeling it into the right places and being able to express it in a way that becomes healthy, and all the while, you know, getting clean and sober for himself. Because I'm gonna say it, I believe that with Amber, she didn't really want him in a place of sobriety. Like, she wanted to keep him weak, because when he comes into his power is when he leaves her, is when, you know, I know she filed for divorce, but I know he was leaving her. He knew the marriage wasn't going to work out. In fact, we saw his psychiatrist notes, which even talked about like not wanting to marry her. Because he knew. And that's part of the Piscean energy, is trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, trusting, you know, that you're someone who is highly sensitive, and being able to trust that those knowings are accurate. So that's also part of the transforming of the Chiron, and having that superpower of deep, it's the high priestess in the tarot, it's the intuition, it's, you know, being discerning as well, being very discerning. And also related to Pisces in the tarot is the Hanged Man, and that's sacrifice, and that's Pisces, the 12th house of sacrifice. And the Hanged Man is actually a card of deep psychological transformation, but it's through, like, the Hanged Man is sacrificing himself. You know, it's Odin hanging from the tree for 40 days and 40 nights and sacrificing one of his eyes so that he could see with new eyes. So it's really deep. That's why Johnny Depp, it's also deep. There's, you know, it's written right there. And that's sort of how his Chiron return went. And now we see a sort of different version of him. At the same time that his relationship with Amber was happening, he was realizing that he was having issues with his money managers. So that was also part of the Chiron return, because it's about not, you know, just trusting people all the time. It's about discernment, and about taking back control of your life in a place where you're empowered, and you're not just giving yourself away. That's part of the sacrifice, just giving yourself away to people who don't have your best interest at heart, and having those boundaries, and overcoming, you know, and being able to work with your own anger, and looking at your sensitivity as a gift and not a curse. That's another big thing, is that, you know, not numbing out the sensitivity or the feelings, actually going into them and pulling from them all of the things that are really wonderful about that. So a person with a Chiron in Pisces is really going to struggle with their own internal landscape, their emotional landscape. That's why in the Hanged Man you see he's usually hanging over water, because it's Piscean. And so then, okay, they get a divorce, and then, you know, he's also having these lawsuits with the money managers. There's all of the various, you know, various lawsuits that are happening against the Sun in the UK. He's starting to really realize that he's been victimized, right? But that he can actually do something about it. He wants to clear his name. So his Saturn return comes, and that's happening now. Okay, he's in his Saturn return, so he's dealing with a lot of the repercussions of a lot of this stuff. But this is also where the healing takes place, because Aquarius is the star card, and that's where, look, all the skeletons are out of the closet now, and there's a vulnerability, and this is where he becomes his most authentic self. It's all out in the open. And so, you know, he's allowed that, and he filed this defamation suit, and he knew that this was all going to come out, and it was coming out, right? It was. And I'm going to be honest with you, just to sidebar for a moment, that I didn't pay attention to this case until the first week that the case was happening. I live under a rock. You can see that. I don't follow Hollywood happenings. I don't follow really any of the corporate media, the pop culture. I don't really follow like really any of it. I get sort of bits and pieces here and there. I do love film, and I love music and poetry and art and books and all of that, and philosophy, psychology, all that stuff. But I don't follow this stuff. So I was really drawn to this. And my hope is that everyone who's listening, and you're still listening, that you look at your own Chiron and look at your own astrology chart. Go to an astrologer, do it yourself, you know, and look at these things, because it's an as above, so below. The stars don't lie. The other thing that I want to say about Amber, just to touch on her briefly, she, I believe, has her Chiron in the sign of Gemini. And that would be the wound of communication. But in her case, because again, that presents itself differently for everyone. So if you have a Chiron in Gemini, don't think that this is about you. Probably isn't. But for her, with her background, and her last name is Heard, as in I hear you, hearing, listening, communication, Chiron in Gemini, communication. For me, I'm going to title it The Wound of Truth. So this is where defamation happens, slander, gossip, all of that. So you do with that what you will. She has the wound of truth, and he has the wound of empathy. And he will not be duped again by people, I'm telling you, because he met her, and they were a vibrational match at that point. You know, and a lot of you may get triggered by that, because it's like, no, she gaslighted him, she manipulated him, she pretended to be all the things that she thought he would want. Yes, you're right. And that's also Chiron in Pisces, is that you will be easily gaslighted if that wound is not understood, because that's the illusion, that's the fantasy. It's the Knight of Cups. That's Piscean. The Knight of Cups is the dreamer. He romanticizes everything, the poet, all of that. And it's so beautiful, because he's the knight in shining armor, the savior. Oh gosh, you know, and a lot of us can relate to that. It's the empath, sort of narcissist, for lack of a better word, because I'm not saying she's a narcissist. I think I don't even know. They may need something new for her, but, you know, she has some things, and we all do. And so we're just trying to understand where this is coming from for him, and sort of what he's moving through. So I have good news. Did I say everything I wanted to say? Okay, so that's where someone with a Chiron in Pisces will be easily victimized unless they understand their own wounding on a deep level. They will be easily victimized, easily lied to, easily, you know, manipulated. And he was figuring it out. I will give him credit. He was figuring it out, but it's that understanding of like romanticizing pain even. That's why he was like writing on the wall, you know, down in Australia, because that was his way of like, I'm gonna make art out of my pain, you know. And for some people, they may not understand that, but those of you still watching, you do. So okay, so, and if you want to look at the reading, his soul blueprint that I did for him, he's a highly advanced soul. He really is. Good news. Let's end on a positive note here, because I know it feels heavy, like I'm feeling it. Positive note. The worst is behind him. Okay, the worst is behind him, and he is now in his Jupiter return. Yay! Jupiter in Aries. So he was born with his natal Jupiter in Aries, which I was too. So I'm in my Jupiter return right now, and he was also born with his MC in Aries. So he is in a fabulous moment right now, no matter which way the jury rules, okay? Because I honestly don't know which way this is going to go. However, that being said, Jupiter is in Aries. It just started, just moved into Aries in May, and it'll be there until next year. And this is a time of good luck, good fortune, expansion, growth, blessings. You know, it's Jupiter. He is, you know, just a beautiful energy. So I wanted to end it on a good note, and that's where, you know, the worst is behind him. We have not seen anything yet from him. He is going to have, I believe, a lot of really positive things happen for him in his life. He's going to be doing a lot of positive things. I do believe, you know, with the addictions and things like that, he's really going to overcome a lot of that. He may have already. I mean, this is, you know, he's been at this for a while now, meaning, you know, fighting this fight in the courts and everything with multiple things. So I really feel like he's already there in many ways. We can see that, you know, from his demeanor in the courtroom. We can see that even from his overall health, the way that he looks. I think he looks very healthy. I think that he looks very positive. There's like that spark is in his eyes. He's kind of got that. His aura looks really good. Just very, very positive. So that was the message, you guys. I hope that this resonated. You know, please feel free to chime in. I know a lot of you know a lot about his chart. You know, I haven't gone into any of the aspects or anything like that. I really wanted to do this focus of Chiron, the wounded healer. So we are all wounded healers in our own way. And it's sort of, you know, this is a beautiful reflection for all of us. And we all wish Johnny Depp just nothing but the best. So blessings to him, blessings to all of you. Thank you all for being here and for sharing this beautiful Sunday in Sedona with me. I hope you enjoy this. I'm leaving for Los Angeles tomorrow, so really excited about that. Get my toes in the sand and go to the beach. Oh my God. So happy about that, and I will definitely be coming to you with a couple of special videos. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks you guys for all of your love and support. You truly mean the world to me. It's really just such a blessing. So take good care, drink your water, get your sunshine, do something good for yourself, be with those that you love, and I will see you soon. Namaste.